We might be ready to go. No one's entered the meeting room for a little while, so I think we can get started on the panel. So first of all, we just want to thank everybody for coming and being a part of the first ever Emerge Fusion Dance Festival. This is really exciting for us and something that's been in the works for a little while. So it's finally here and we're pumped about it. But yeah, we're starting off this weekend of dancing with a panel discussion, of course, about the future of fusion. So just thank you for taking the time out of your schedules to discuss this with us. So before we start, even though we're meeting in a digital world, we would like to just acknowledge that Lusitania right now, we are broadcasting from the Tsleil-Waututh, Squamish and Musqueam territories, also known as Vancouver. So the reason we do this land acknowledgement is to insert awareness for Indigenous presence and land rights in everyday life. Something not to be forgotten. So the other panel members and I are so honored to be here to host this discussion. We feel like it's really important to facilitate and create a space where we can discuss topics surrounding something we all love so much and so passionate about, and that's dance. So the objective of the panel discussion is to dive into thoughtful conversation about where we see fusion belly dance emerging, evolving, and doing it with integrity and intention. And again, before we begin, I'd like to state that this is not the place for any derogatory remarks or hate speech. So please keep the comments and the questions respectful. Otherwise, you will be removed by the moderator, me. So my name is Megan Tuckey, and I have a zero tolerance for inappropriate behavior, so don't do it. So before we get going again, I'm just going to give you an outline of what to expect for the evening. We'll take you through the flow. So first we're going to introduce the lovely panel members we have here with us today. And then we're going to discuss 3 main questions and then finally end with a Q&A from you, the attendees. So just a little bit about the Q&A. Some people may have used this before, but there's a feature in Zoom, which is the Q&A feature down at the bottom of your screen. So if you'd like to ask a question during the question and answer time, or if you have something that comes up that you want to remember while we're talking, you can write your question in the Q&A feature, and then we'll know that it's there. And if you're thinking that if you see a question in there that somebody else already has put in there, but you would like to make sure it gets answered, you can upvote that question and it will kind of bring it to the top. So please keep all the questions just in the Q&A area, not in the chat, because it could get missed there. So please feel free to use the chat as you go. We'd love to hear from you and your thoughts on what's happening. And just make sure that you change the audience to attendees and panelists so everybody can see what you're writing. All right, so now let's get to the introductions. I'll just introduce myself first. So everybody is just going to state their name, pronouns, where they're from, and their type of fusion. So my name is Megan Tuckey. I perform and instruct with Lusitania in Vancouver, BC. I use the pronouns she, her, and the type of fusion we do includes inspiration from belly dance, contemporary, jazz, and street styles such as whacking and house. And we're really loving this type of fusion. I'll pass it on to I have Michelle in my first screen, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Perfect. My name is Michelle Sorensen and my pronouns are she, her. I'm based in Salt Lake City, Utah. And I've been focusing a lot on waving and exotic dance with my fusion. And I feel like it's just starting to come together in a really exciting way. So excited to see where I go with that.
Yeah, I've been loving watching all your videos too. It's really inspiring. Thank you. We have Rin over to my right.
Hi, I'm Rin from Sacramento, California. Pronouns she, her. And my style I call experimental fusion. It's sort of an amorphous fusion of previous dance influences and just organic experimentation with movement.
Awesome, thank you so much, Rin. And we have Nikki, who's under Lusitania Dance right now, is also right next to me, behind the scenes.
Sorry, to Lusitania. And I use she, her pronouns. And we, like Megan was saying, live here in Vancouver on the unceded Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh First Nations. Yeah, and we've been doing, like Megan said, contemporary jazz, street dance, belly dance, and mixing that into our fusion.
Thank you, Nikki. All right, and we have Grayson, who is next over.
Hi, I'm Grayson Von Trapp. I'm from North Texas, and I use he, him. I self-identify as a transnational fusion dancer, and I focus primarily on contemporary modern dance and West African.
Perfect, thanks so much, Grayson. And we have Kelly next up.
Hi, my name's Kelly, and she and her. And then for my dance style, usually I do fusion, combine contemporary or jazz or whatever come off on my body.
Love it. Thank you, Kelly. And so Kelly's coming from us from Taiwan. So it's actually a way different time for her than we are here. So I think it's the morning. Is that right, Kelly? It's the morning over in...
Yes, I forgot to say I'm from Taipei, Taiwan. Sorry for that.
Nice. No, yeah, well, thank you for being here so early as well. Well, late, early, whatever it is. And then next we have Carolina Lux.
Hi, everybody. I'm Carolina, and I'm based in Los Angeles, California. And it is 5 p.m. for me. My style, I call it neo belly dance. And to me, that's kind of, I guess, just exemplified by what this festival is. It's just about asking questions, identifying who we are as individuals so we can contribute to a larger community, identifying a community so we can contribute to ourselves, and creating a lot of questions and topics and pushing realms of fusion. So I'm excited to see how that fits into this. And my styles that I study are whacking, house dance, Chicago footwork, tutting, waving, and some contemporary and ballet, as well as belly dance and some martial arts. And I'm also a singer. So like Rin, I like to try to incorporate music.
Yeah, so awesome. Thank you so much, Carolina. Yeah, and if you haven't checked out her band, Sepia Tonic, you definitely should as well. And Moxie. So yeah, go check them out. And lastly, we have Serena Spears.
Hello. My name is Serena Spears. My pronouns are she, her. I'm originally from Long Island, but I'm currently living in Brooklyn, New York. I think at this point, my fusion is kind of called all the things. I love all styles of movement and music, and I've spent the last 30 years just sort of exploring whatever caught my attention. So I have a broad background in dance, but I wouldn't say it's necessarily deep in every style that I've touched. But at the moment, I am most interested in exploring hip hop, Afro-Latin, and Brazilian dance, and modern, along with Menath dance. So that's where I am right now.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Serena. Thank you, panel members, for introducing yourselves. I know, Michelle, you will have to duck out a little early today, so just don't be alarmed if you see one box leaving throughout the time today. I want to take this opportunity to also remind everybody that this panel is by donation, so all the proceeds are going to Lebanon Red Cross. So here is the donation. I hope that's showing up on people's screens correctly or in a certain way. So you can send the donations to Serena Spears, either PayPal or Venmo. And it's right here. Yeah. It's also on our event page if you like. I'll put this up again at the end of the panel. All right, so getting to the question time. So we have 3 questions that we'll be posing to the panel today, and each individual panelist will have approximately 3 to 5 minutes to answer. So I'll read the question once in the beginning, and then if somebody needs me to reread the question, just let me know before you talk. And I'll also put each question in the chat below. We also want to state here that everyone here is their own person, and the comments from each panel member are theirs and theirs alone, and they do not necessarily represent other dancers or other panel members or even the festival as a whole. There may be some overlapping ideas, but knowing that each person here is an individual. And we're not saying that this is the way or the only way to approach these answers or these questions. These are just the thoughts from very passionate people in the community and a way to open up the conversation. So now your job as the audience is to find a comfy spot and just take out a notebook if you like and get ready for some dance talk. All right, so question number 1. This one is what to take and what to let go. So what do you see as being the most important thing to change for fusion belly dance and our community around it in order for it to thrive? And what are the most important things we should hold on to? So I'm going to open up the floor. Anybody can take the first lead. You can just raise your hand and we'll know who's talking.
I can start this if nobody else. This was the one that I felt like I really wanted to say something specific, so I kind of wrote something out that I was going to read, if that helps kick it off, unless anybody else is ready to. Okay. It's going to be a lot of, am I stepping on your toes? So I kind of wrote, it's a little bit poetic, but I wanted to just share, I think about this topic so much. So what to take, what to let go of. As dancers, we are feelers, we are lovers. As we would do for any human person that we love, we speak with clear boundaries, expressing and defining our own voice, and also we listen. We create space to receive, to hear the stories of our loved ones past, their pain and their triumphs. As we look forward to the future of belly dance, so must this be the approach we take. A conversation with our loved one, with this art form. Polarization and sides is the way of colonialization. The only way to fight it is to unpolarize. We cannot say this must be one way or this must be the only good way. We have to make thousands of micro adjustments as we go. When we make vast generalizations such as we have to uphold the roots and it's all the roots and don't add anything from your voice, or conversely, we just have to push forward, the past is the past, forget what happened and move on. In either of those cases of black and white circumstances, we create an unbalance. The human mind, especially in times of fear, wants so badly to latch to one polarized concept. Our little monkey minds cry out to just find one certainty in a crazy reality. Give me one sentence I can claim. But this is not how I see the future of art, of community, and of belly dance. Every day needs to be a dialogue. I speak, I listen. I need to use my intuition to know when to raise my voice and when to shut up because something else is crying out to be heard. In the same way that dancing is not just standing 2 flat feet on the ground, it is 1,000 micro adjustments as our weight changes, as our gravity shifts, always feeling the balance in our core, shifting as needed. So too must be our relationship to our community and our culture. We have to keep moving. We cannot be scared of falling over. So we take steps. We feel off, we make terrible, awkward mistakes, and then we keep moving. We adjust, we try again. As allies for whatever minority we do not represent, we especially do this. Fear cannot paralyze us. We must remember context and perspective. Strong individuals make strong communities. Strong communities make strong individuals, and so the cycle goes. We must seek to know the past, and we must seek to know ourselves, and both will inform each other. Without speaking from our unique light, our rare, precious source, we will get stagnation. Without listening and receiving, we get appropriation. We need to integrate and not eliminate. Our roots education needs to integrate into our fusion, not eliminate fusion. Our fusion needs to not eliminate roots, but integrate roots. This means learning our own true voice and also learning the cultures we draw or have stolen from and honoring them. And then for me, this might look like some examples. Teaching your fusion classes, but taking the first 10 minutes of each class to tell your students the cultural story of the moves. Integrating set times into our fusion training to take courses, read articles and books, listening to music specifically on the roots of our culture. giving our students homework assignments about traditional rhythms, etc., along with their own personal freestyle and improvisation practices. We do not need to eliminate fusion to integrate roots. Thank you, Megan. We have to think like a dancer in our approach to community culture and continuously balance. Specific things I want to hold on to from Bellydance and roots: emotional vulnerability and depth. This is something really rare that I found only really at this level in belly dance and not in street dance and other dance cultures. Our vulnerability and our breadth of emotion in our art. Other people obviously emote too, but there's something very tender about our belly dance community. Awareness of our cultures, the nations, and the people that these styles came from. So all of this knowledge, this body of like history, and also the inclusiveness and acceptance, the community energy of our scene. Things I want to move forward with are fear of challenging and peer critiquing each other. I think it's time for belly dancers to say, you can improve with this. That wasn't your best. We need to hold each other to professional standards, or we're going to start to become a very stagnant, small community that other people don't want to watch the shows of. It's okay to say you could do better. Let me help you without breaking someone's heart that's our friend. Our standards for our shows. A Hafla is an inclusive area. A ticketed show needs to have a higher standard, or our communities will become masturbatory. It will be the same people going to each other's shows, patting each other on the back. If we want to bring in new people, we have to think extending beyond patting ourselves on the back with our work. And I want to create things that other people want to come to so we can sustain and grow and connect our community. And I also, the last thing, I don't know, this is my long one, I promise. New awareness of our representation of genders and races in our communities and active participation in this. Not just thinking about it, but taking steps as producers to hire with more diversity, to change our language when we say things like, all right, ladies, belly dance time. And knowing that not everybody is a lady, and knowing that not everybody comes from these same perspectives, and starting to change our jargon from the ground up as we create art from there. That was my long one.
No, nice, I love it. Thank you so much. I love the integrate, not eliminate. I feel like that is very important to remember. So thank you so much for your thoughtful, poetic response. It was beautiful. Opening up the floor to other panel members who would like to take the seat. Oh yeah, Michelle, if you want to go, you can go ahead.
Mine is super short, and I kind of am just reiterating almost everything Carolina says. I definitely think we need to acknowledge the roots of all art forms that we draw from, and because I think history can bring awareness and connection to the communities we're a part of individually and collectively. As far as having an art form thrive, I'm going to talk a little bit more about like the financial aspect of having our fusion community thrive. Financially, artists all around the world are suffering right now, obviously with the pandemic. But fusion belly dance, in my opinion, has never really been a headline in the public spotlight. Many festivals and studios are shutting down permanently. If we're talking about thriving in terms of money, I don't think we've ever been there as a community. It has always been a pass the dollar game, or like a masturbatory kind of situation. I think in order to draw more interest to belly dance from the general public or other dance genres, we need to approach it in a way that makes it palatable from a technical standpoint for all gender identities. And that's all I had about that.
Yes, yeah, thank you so much. Snap, snap, snaps. All the comments are like, I'm screaming, yes. Love this. Anybody else to talk for this question? Serena, if you'd like to go, you can take the seat.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. Okay, so I'm gonna jump off a little bit of what Carolina said, and I had a little bit written, so I'll just go with that. So to thrive, I think that a community can't have a fixed power structure or a rigid group dynamic. Communities thrive from an atmosphere of growth and development. And a lot of what Carolina was saying about just sort of like patting each other on the back and not pushing for real excellence, I think is a problem, but also that if there's no potential for advancement, or if it feels exclusionary and the power structure feels indifferent to the needs of people below, people won't grow, they won't stay, and the community will stagnate on its own. I think a lot of times people come in and they don't see anywhere to grow to. I feel like in the US, and honestly, this is the only frame of reference I have, there's a solidified upper tier of dancers that I think have been headlining events for over 10 years. And I'm not saying anything negative about them because they're excellent dancers, but I think that it's really difficult to break into that tier if you are coming from below, especially as a dancer of color. I think you have to be absolutely exceptional to even have a shot at being recognized. And honestly, I can think of only 2 Black fusion belly dancers that I would say are headliners in the US. And honestly, I bet I don't even have to name them. If I told you that one has an incredible afro and the other one has decades of knowledge and experience in dance academia, you know exactly who they are. And I don't think that I could name another. And I think that that really needs to change. So not to get too deep, because I know that the second question is coming and I have I have more for this. But I think that you can't simultaneously agree to benefit monetarily from a cultural art and then remove yourself from the responsibility of representing those roots without creating conflict in the dance community. And I see it it's not just in belly dance, I see this in every minority dance culture that pushes into the mainstream and then has a whole like white tier that comes in on top that becomes your headliners. And the people who came in are still, or the people who created the culture are in this bottom tier of not necessarily getting recognized for being of the culture and having that historical and cultural knowledge. And so I think that we can definitely take major steps to improve this. And I've seen a lot of conversations about it recently, and I'm excited to hear more and see more. And the second half of the question, it's not all bad. I think that especially coming with a background in a lot of other dance styles, belly dance has a lot going for it, for women specifically. But I think that we have to think about intersections of privilege that, like, even as women of color feel marginalized, being in an industry that is like female majority is not normal by any means. Having it powered by women, having shows and organizers and performers and teachers and students having the idea of like female and like multi-gender, having it not just be male dominated, I think is really important. Maintaining an idea of openness and inclusion, I think we represent that well. Maybe we can do better in a like gender representation presence, but that I think we being in so many male dominated spaces, I really appreciate and respect the belly dance community for the empowerment, for the kindness, for the community, for the acceptance, for the lack of judgment. It does feel really beautiful. And I love that about belly dance, and I love that about our community. The end.
Thank you so much, Serena. I totally agree. There's definitely room for us to improve in this community, in this industry, but there's also so many good things about it. So yeah, thank you for that so much. We have a few more people who still have to answer. Feel free to chime in and get in the hot seat.
Unmute mine. Okay.
There we go.
Oh, is yours unmuted? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so definitely echoing a few things that everyone has said already. And when I was thinking about this question, like the first thing that kind of came to mind was how grateful I am for the community and friendships that dance has brought into my life. So just kind of springboarding off what Serena just said, you know, about having that community, and like dance is about connection and friendships and like how much that has enriched my life. But I was also thinking about how I can say that from a place of privilege, being a white cisgendered female. And I know that that's not necessarily been everyone's experience in this community. So I think, yeah, like we've been talking about creating safe spaces that are inclusive of all races, gender expressions, sexualities, body types, age, everyone is really, really important. Pushing our fusion and keeping training in traditional styles, like we've all been talking about, and you know how sharing art and culture can be a really beautiful thing. And in this exchange, we do have to be aware of where the power imbalances lie and what is within our power to shift. I think one important thing that we need to let go as a community in order to move forward, and I know this has already been, you know, talked about a lot in the community and echoing some voices as well, such as Donna Mejia's, but is letting go of the word tribal. It's important to hold on to our roots and recognize where these movements came from and passing that information on to our students, but reducing the many varied, rich, and complex, beautiful Indigenous cultures from around the world into a single amalgamation or monolith and labeling it as tribal and putting that onto our dance, which is a pretty new invention, is not holding respect for those cultures, in my opinion. We see the devastating effects that colonialism has on traditional cultures, and as well as cultures, tribal cultures here in our home, in Canada, here in Vancouver, and all over Canada, US, Mexico, Australia, where all these Indigenous cultures are from, and how much of that culture has been stripped away from them over the years. And I think it's often forgotten that there is a current ongoing genocide to remove any sort of agency that these cultures have. And I think that we're not doing it a favor by removing the word that they have to self-identify, which is tribal. It takes away their agency, self-identity, and I think our fusion does need to be informed both from traditional styles and the styles we are melding, and we need to respect the stories of those who came before us and the stories of the people whose lands we share. We need to come together as a community and fight for respect and sovereignty for everyone. Black lives matter, Indigenous lives matter, and let's come together to fight the systems of oppression that aim to divide us.
Thank you so much, Nikki. Yeah, they're very important. Thank you for your thoughtful response on that.
Thanks.
And we can move over to anybody else who would like to speak on this question. Grayson? Absolutely.
All right. I'm a huge nerd and I typed all my responses out because I panic when I'm on camera. So if I'm kind of doing this, that's why. So the 2 points that I kind of want to add to this, one is going to be a socioeconomic aspect, and the second is just going to be a little self-indulgent, me speaking from the place of a dude in the community. So I want to start that in order to things to take and what to let go, letting go, I think we need to hold on to our events, obviously, and hold on to our community, but maybe what events look like is changing with the climate. And I think for many, socioeconomic access to this art has been a huge barrier. So if anything, I think that this pandemic has illuminated that offering reparative and sliding scale and sponsored tuition for things has brought more people in. And I would like to see that kind of structure continue on past this point after, unemployment is not an absolute tragedy worldwide, but especially here in the United States. So that's what I have to say about what to let go and what to keep, maybe shifting that. Now, I'm not a business person, so I'm not 100% sure how that goes forward, but it's something I've been thinking about. And next, as I said, this is going to be me speaking more just from the perspective of being a man in the stance form. Another issue relating to diversity is costuming. And this is not this seems like a very small pedantic thing compared to like the really big, larger conversations about, attending to cultural integrity and whatnot. So this does seem like a little narrow compared to all of that. But I know that as a guy, I am definitely not the only person in this community that suffers from lack of costuming availability and options. Because I know dancers of size and also of color, finding, like the nude colors and things that are large enough or small enough. We all kind of have these issues. But as a very personal issue, putting together stage-appropriate costuming as a masculine belly dancer is nearly impossible because nobody makes anything stage-ready for a professional performance. And that's something I would like to see let go and have more inclusivity brought into performance sphere for us male and masculine identified dancers. Because without artisan level sewing skills, which not all of us have, and without hefty disposable income, which I'd say most of us don't have, in order to get things made custom, it's just a huge point of access that we're missing, that I know other marginalized dancers are missing. So I don't know if that means there are belly dance costumers, and this is me speaking off the cuff. I don't know if that means like putting screws to companies that only cater to one very, very narrow demographic and saying, we need more from you, or if that means other people opening up shop. I know that's a lot to ask, but typically, when I interviewed all the guys for my thesis paper, Masculinity in American Belly Dance, we kind of all had this unanimous agreement that costuming was one of just the biggest points of access and the biggest headaches, and that it's either a mixture of Frankensteining things together from Etsy and whatever you can manage to sew yourself. So that gathered aesthetic that we all kind of share, all sort of male and masculine fusion belly dancers tend to share, is not necessarily intentional. It's just kind of it's kind of just the only option. So to recap just that, I think diversity in costuming, specifically for stage, for performance, for like professional performance, is something that I would like to see change and be offered more of, stage-ready costumes. And that's all I'll say for now.
Thank you, Grayson, for bringing that up. It's completely true. The costuming is a huge part of dance as well. So yeah, thank you for bringing that up. All right, and anybody else would like to speak? Would Rin or Kelly? Yeah, Rin, absolutely.
Hello. Okay, so I've written something down as well. But first I want to echo, basically what everyone has said. I think that just some incredible points have been made, and so clearly and cogently. So let me dive in here. Okay. So my primary focus in answering this question revolves around community and what makes a space welcoming and inclusive. In order to truly thrive, not just symbolically as an art form, but more sustainably as a collective of human beings, I feel we have to examine the way that we communicate with one another. It seems like it'll be a constant work in progress to adapt spaces, practice spaces and studios and so on, for the various forms of diversity that present themselves, such as neurodiversity, ethnic, physical, gender, and so on. Regarding inclusivity in dance settings, my question is, how can we find a balanced medium between the following extremes? on one hand, we have, I don't see you. In other words, I know or suspect that your experience of the world is somehow different, but I either don't know how to communicate with you about it, or I choose to ignore your experiential differences entirely to maintain a sense of normalcy. That would be on one extreme. And then on the other extreme, it would be I'm watching you. So constantly pointing out or listing differences, or imposing preconceived notions about others' experiences and assuming and speaking over people. So this can also strangely cause a person to feel invisible. Both of the prior mentioned extremes involve strained assumptions and can produce tension within community or smaller settings of groups. And I believe that the happy medium between these two extremes would be I see you. So that would be acknowledging differences and respecting experiences by listening and learning first before asserting our own judgments. And this ensures that we don't force our perceptions of identities upon others, even as an intended positive gesture of support, as we often tend to underestimate the nuance of people's personal experiences. We're prone to assumptions as humans, especially with unfamiliar behaviors or circumstances when they present themselves. And while nothing is certain, assumption is a natural and valuable tendency that our brains use to work more efficiently so that there isn't an overload of novelty. However, it's when we start leaning into and acting upon and asserting our assumptions that it's not as sustainable. And that's where we start seeing divisive and projective behaviors such as gossip, which unfortunately I have been subject to and have overheard and have heard directly. And that's just to me not sustainable when we're talking about the broader aspect of sustainable community in general. So my personal example in this arena would be my experience being neurodivergent. And this essentially means that my brain processes information in such a way that I have to use different mechanisms or have developed different pathways to adapt to my environment. So sensory sensitivity and social processing are factors that affect my experience and occasionally lead to different behavior or adaptive needs that may not be considered normal. So this is not something I would expect people to guess, but I use this example to further illustrate the point that taking a moment to check our own assumptions about others' behavior before acting or gossiping can spare us from unnecessary conflict and the subsequent need for damage control that I see a lot. So to reiterate, my primary suggestion is that we consider the way that we go about managing our assumptions when they arise. When we're not aware of something, we're more likely to make mistakes, so that's prone to happen, but it provides opportunity for learning. And I feel that the best way to keep community thriving is to continue forward with an attitude of openness and an understanding that none of us have the full picture. So that's what I had written down. And so it's essentially just an invitation for more responsible communication and asking questions, because again, we're all prone to assumption. It's just what happens. And that's okay. It's just how we act on our assumptions and not deliberately spreading those assumptions around, but rather inquiring or just paying a little bit more attention, because we don't all have the full picture. So that's what I could see changing, but I want to echo some of the extreme positives, and why I'm still around and why I'm still on this panel is because I feel like the community has a lot to offer and we've got a lot of potential to grow, and that's why we're all here discussing things that could change and improve. And I hope that we have this collective growth mindset moving forward. Yeah, like the sensitivity aspect is something I haven't found in any other general community, and as a sensitive person in general, I think it's very welcoming, and it's allowed me that sort of starting point to grow and develop and as a human. And so there's a whole lot else I could say, but yeah, thanks. That's it.
Thank you so much, Rin. Yeah, I agree that finding a balanced medium for communication is super important, and everybody learns differently and intakes information differently. So thank you for bringing that up. And anybody else would like to? Oh yeah, Carolina.
Oh, I was saying, yes, Rin.
Like, what? And I think we have one more. Yeah, Kelly, you have the floor.
Okay, because my English, I didn't write too much because that will take forever. So I think for me, I feel like the most important thing will be love. Because if we love, then we know when or where should hold or let it go. Because sometimes it's not just go and then buy forever, you know what I mean? So it's like, it's sometimes coming out, it's like depends on what you do and then what situation you have now. So if we have like the love, the open mind, so that will the answer will come out. Yeah, for me will be like that.
Thank you so much, Kelly. I agree. Love is not always all you need, but it sure is important. So yeah, keeping love in the community is definitely a thing that we should remember and always put at the forefront. Thank you so much, panel, for your thoughtful responses on that first question. We're going to dive right into it and go to the second question. Thank you, attendees, for being active in the chat and giving our panelists support. It's really appreciated. And again, if you have any questions, you can use the Q&A function, and we'll do a Q&A at the end. Otherwise, you can just hold on to those questions and type them in at the end of the panel. So jumping into the second question, this one is based on cultural intention. The question is, how do we approach being politically and socially aware in the next generation of belly dance? Is it possible to go too little or too far in our efforts to be culturally sensitive? So I'll open the floor to whoever would like to speak first. And I'll put the question in the chat as well. And Michelle, yeah, absolutely.
I'll go first just because I have to leave soon. And I just want to start out by saying that Donna Mejia, I feel like, has always been so eloquent on this topic. And she actually has a more recent blog post on her website. And I can link it here in the comments as well. But she addressed the fusion community as a whole in this particular article. But personally, I feel that if someone from the cultures we are borrowing from says something that I'm doing is harmful, then it's harmful. And it's not my place to tell them that I did not hurt them. And that can be difficult to navigate in a world where so many things are borrowed without credit. Ultimately, I think respectfully crediting and giving back via donations/volunteering to the cultures from which we borrow, especially if we are monetizing said art, is the most ethical way forward. We can love something and still participate as long as we're doing it respectfully. And that's it.
Yes, thank you so much. Yeah, 100% agree. I think we're all like, yep.
Short and sweet.
So much. Yeah, like I got it right. But yeah, thank you so much.
Like, mic drop, bam.
Yeah. Amazing answer. Who wants to follow it? The floor is open if anybody would like to answer the second question. Yeah, Nikki.
Unmute mine. Let's unmute yours. Okay, unmute yours. Okay. Yeah, totally agree with everything Michelle said. And yeah, I just kind of wrote for my short answer for this question, how do we approach this, is just with empathy, compassion, and curiosity. And just trying to remember that it's like Donna Mejia said, I love her, we're all fumbling forward together. We're all learning. We've all made mistakes. We learn from our mistakes. We grow from our mistakes. And most importantly, we take responsibility for them. And we listen to people who tell us that we've hurt them. Yeah, and I think it's just important, like for leaders and people in positions of power, like we've been talking about in the community, to be always considering the different social and political aspects of the community that they are holding space for, and the impacts of their actions and words. Creating as many safe spaces and opportunities for learning such as this is a great way to go about that. Creating diversity in our festival lineups, in our production teams, just in general more in our world, and making sure that we're representing all the different voices. That's what we have to do working in a colonial, patriarchal, and capitalist society, because the aim of that is to divide us, and we need to be able to come together from a place of respect and mutual understanding. It definitely can be hard and uncomfortable to talk about these things sometimes, but yeah, like I was saying, no growth is going to come from a place of comfort ever. We need to be constantly challenging the status quo and questioning what we are doing, especially when that involves exchange between cultures. Too little, I think, would be not considering these topics, not educating our students, and not passing information along, not teaching about the histories, and all that kind of stuff. And I don't know if it's possible to go too far in being politically and socially aware. Yeah, I think that's my answer.
Great. Thank you, Nikki, so much. That was, yeah, great answer, really thoughtful response, so thank you. I also wanted to just put in there that Lisa in the chat, she also said to avoid shaming new dancers as they may not be educated. Like, this is something that people come into and it's a learning experience. So instead of shaming somebody who might not know the history on something, it's better to just educate in a positive way. Yeah, so thank you for that comment in there. And anybody else want to take the hot seat?
I can go.
Perfect. Yeah, Carolina, you got it.
Anyone off. I just want to make sure like I'm not being dominating. So, okay, kind of gonna piggyback off of that. And from my notes, what I have is, this is kind of answering both of them at once, but there's being politically aware and politically involved versus being politically paranoid and politically fragile. And as a white person, this is something that I've seen, and obviously I'm only speaking as a white person and there's millions of perspectives, but I've seen in the past white people immobilizing themselves in an effort to participate in political correctness and culture, and in the end almost removing themselves from the community. And I'm not thinking of like one person right now, like who is she talking about? It's just like a thing that I've seen go down in certain circumstances. And I think it's already, you know, it's already a privilege to say that we could go too far with this, because obviously like any amount of effort is better than racism, sexism, like all that. So just to lay that out there, clearly this is already better that we're even talking about it. But I have experienced white dancers becoming, let me start this over. Fragility is a privilege in itself. For us to say like, do I belong here? I don't know, this is complicated, this tires me, I'm quitting. Like, that's already a privilege. To be able to say like, this makes me uncomfortable, so I don't know if I should be here. Like, Black dancers, the people that created a lot of these styles, never had anyone looking at them in the eyes saying, you belong here, you should participate. So it's like, it is a privilege of our fragility as white people to be waiting for someone to give us permission to participate. No one's going to give us that permission. We just need to consciously involve ourselves in the way that everyone's been saying. And so I think that that's just like a really important thing to remember, is I do actually believe you can go too far with this, to where you come around like from 0 to an infinity and you almost make it about yourself again. And it's like, you know, at first you're just being aware of the minority cultures, and then suddenly it's like, but am I allowed? Am I allowed? Should I be here? And suddenly I made it about my white ass again. Like, it's just like, it's really easy to just like, I do think you can go too far. And you have to remember what the point of this was. It wasn't about me looking like a hero for the minority. It was about really literal individual lives being uplifted. So that's like one thing. And then the other thing I wanted to say is, yeah, like in response to Grayson, and this kind of adds on, I don't think anyone should ever say something like costuming or anything should be like, oh, sorry, it's just about me. It's not. Like, these are really important things. And like, as you're talking, everyone's just like these little things like costuming and pricing, these are the things that create the systems that integrate or push out people. And so for you to bring that up is like hugely relevant. And I think like even just as you're talking, I can just think of 20 more things that we might do subconsciously as little things like, oh, it's just like that. And those are the little things that make people just internalize their feeling of segregation. And then the one last thing I wanted to say is like, as I do so much fusion, like I'm pretty like maybe not quite as deep into house dance culture and whacking culture. Actually, with whacking, I probably am at this point. But I am absorbed in those cultures as well, kind of in the way that I am with belly dance. So I try to look for parallels, because sometimes analyzing the culture of house dance can teach me something about belly dance I might not have seen, like, because I'm just so used to it. And something that I noticed in house dance is that there are a lot of moves that are basically ripped off from other styles. So there's, I wish I could demonstrate, but there's one move that they call the b-boy move, and it's basically like a bastardized form of a b-boy move. And then there's a Latin move, which is just kind of like a appropriated version of a salsa step. But why don't we call that appropriation? Because of the power dynamics in that situation. This was Black people and Latinx people watching other Black and Latinx people. So it's like there's these contexts within context that we have to consider. In that case, house dancers that weren't even house dancers yet, watching Latin dance and b-boying and stealing their moves created something so genuine and beautiful that is house dance. And if they hadn't stolen those moves, we wouldn't have house dance, and then we wouldn't have the roots of house dance, which were stolen moves. But at the same time, we have to remember this power dynamic. There wasn't one group of people that was like the white perpetrators running the clubs. So as a white person, I can't just say, well, I'm just innovating. I still have to consider the context in which I'm innovating and ask myself who is being hurt in this process. But I do think that without this individual work, who am I as a dancer? Who am I as an artist, as a woman, or whatever gender, a person? Then we are not contributing something unique and fresh to our style, and that will end up stagnating it. So I guess it's kind of like how I said at the beginning, we have to think about the power structures that we're in and how our individual life plays a role in that. And it's our work to do that, especially as white people in this system particularly, but also to just to do that little extra work, which really isn't that much, to say, how can I find that balance, as opposed to just looking at it going, well, this is a mess, like, and I can't hang, like. So that's my balance for that statement.
Yeah, thank you so much, Carolina. Yeah, I think that like in the beginning, like you said, it's all these little things that we may not think are very important, but they all add up in the end and contribute to the issues ongoing. So thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, and I agree, like taking new dance classes, and it will find new perspectives in your body and in your movement, but also in your mind. Things that you may not have thought about come up in different ways. So thank you. And just to, reminder to all panelists, yeah. So just reminding all panelists to, when you're writing in, attendees, that when you're writing in the chat, there's a to section and a drop-down menu. Just make sure you're writing to all panelists and attendees so everybody can see your awesome comments. Yeah. And yeah, who is next? Who would like to take the floor? Don't be shy.
Okay. I lost that staring contest with Bryn. I was waiting for her to take it. All right. I'll go first. Okay, so I think that this is an incredibly nuanced question. And I don't necessarily think that there's a universal correct answer. But I do think that we can focus on being thoughtful and respectful and inclusive of others, and to make our decisions based on that priority. I think, especially as people who are not from the culture of origin, myself included, especially with Bellydance, that we need to be humble and considerate in our approach, and especially to our approach to others' opinions of what we do, of our dancing, our musical choices, our costuming, our aesthetic, our attitudes, the way that we create our art, the way that we share our art, and our interactions with the community. Like Michelle said, just because you had a good thing in mind, it doesn't mean you didn't hurt someone. And to get offended and sensitive about that and shut out the potential for learning, I think has been a big thing, a scar in the community, of not being able to absorb knowledge that you might have done something and you didn't even mean to, and that's fine. But you have to be able to be humble enough to accept that you could have been wrong in someone's eyes. We need to be more inclusive in listening to other people's concerns, in finding and respecting representation from cultures of origin, and in holding their dance, their music, and their culture as something that we love, that we respect, that we enjoy, but that we do not fully own for ourselves. We learn these movements and we learn about the culture and we put them into our bodies, but we did not make them. And we have to honor the line of people who did. So there are a few things that make this conversation really difficult. First, no culture is a monolith. You are going to find a million opinions of what you should have done better from every single person in every single culture, and you cannot please everyone, and you have to know that from the very beginning. And that hurts and it sucks. And I guarantee you, I have felt that too, of like, but so and so said, this is the best thing that I could have possibly done in this situation. And you say no. And that's gonna happen. And this is part of fumbling forward and recognizing that what you did might be fine in one person's eyes and it might be painful to someone else. And being able to sit with that and take that and say, I'm sorry. Not, I tried to, or someone said, or this is, but just sit with it and say, I'm sorry. It's okay. You know you didn't mean to, but you're sorry that you hurt someone. It's not, you're sorry you took it the wrong way, or you're sorry they felt that way. You're sorry that you caused pain, because you are, hopefully. Your attitude when confronted with the idea that you've offended someone, hopefully, would be calm and humble, especially as a member of a majority community. I think there's also the complication and nuance of minorities in another minority culture. Feeling like you understand what they're going through, or that you are also discriminated against, and so you have some sort of allowance in the way that you use another culture. And this is something that we, like, as minorities, have to have a conversation within ourselves of like, I am not from the culture of origin. I am Black, I am a minority, I am discriminated against, but I also have to respect cultures of origin. I also have to learn my history. I also have to study with members of that community. I also have to make connections with that community, and that's important, no matter who you are. So recognizing intersections of privilege and discrimination. And the last, okay, so these these two things are connected. One is my feelings about cancel culture. This is when I feel like it goes a little too far. I can understand minorities who are angry. And I don't want to tell them that it's not their place to feel a certain way, because I don't have that right, and neither do you. Everyone has their feelings and they are entitled to those feelings. The way they react to them is their business, and whether or not I think I would have done something different is a different topic, but they are allowed to have their emotions and their reaction, and that is not your problem. I think when it comes to feeling outrage about someone else's outrage, that person maybe could calm down. Like the like wanting to cancel for a friend sometimes goes a little too far for me. And I think that especially when it comes to the majority trying to protect a minority, it is your job to be calm and have discussions that we can't have. Not to be mad like us and push them off into the oblivion. Like that, the only way to reconcile is for someone to be doing that work and having that conversation. And I don't want to say that it needs to be minorities' work. There are definitely minorities out there that want to do that work, that are great at that work, that write books and have lectures and discussions, and people should pay them and listen to them and accept the work that they're willing to put out. But I don't think we should be asking for additional work from people who do not want to do that work. That's a thing. And along those lines, not telling minorities how to feel or react, but recognizing your own personal reactions and aiming for a goal of being thoughtful and understanding and helping other people move to a place of being thoughtful and understanding. That's my thing. The end.
Yes, thank you so much, Serena. So good. It's always a good reminder for everybody to just remember to stay humble and listen and sit with something if maybe you've said something wrong instead of reacting right away. So thank you for that. All right, and Rin, would you like to, take the hot seat?
Sure. Okay. Wow. So Serena, so eloquently put. So many of the things that you just articulated are things that I've been figuring out how to write, and and you just kind of said it. So I really agree very much about the cancel culture comment. I again agree that anybody should be able to handle something however they wish to handle it, based on whatever's going on with them in their lives and their minds. But then again, we do need to bridge the divide between extremes. Like there are things that I would say or have said or have voiced that have gotten really not so great reactions to, and nowadays that we're having these conversations, which I'm glad that we're having, now that you have well-known dancers, often who are white, saying pretty much the same things, essentially uplifting the voices of people who, I see some of the same people who are kind of like, it's like a foot in the door type of effect where, oh, I see like the same people I saw a couple years ago, who didn't agree, now they agree. And that's just how people are. People can change. And I think that's great. So I really think that it's important to leave the door open. And again, like Serena was saying, not cancel on behalf of other people, because I do think that that just winds up making us an island. And outside of that island, you still have everything that was there before, and you have a thick wall around it, from just like lashing out. And, again, some of that is reasonable, and, who am I to judge how people respond? But so I agree with those points. And I have a couple things written down here. So again, some of the earlier points I also really agree with. It's incredibly important if someone from the culture that you're borrowing from or emulating says that they're affected, please listen. And that goes for myself. You know, I'm not from North Africa or the Middle East, and I always have a lot to learn about the origins of the dance that I do, or anything that I'm borrowing from anyone else. I think it's just kind of a no-brainer, and we always all have more to learn, and we never know what we have to learn until we kind of stumble across it. So, and here's what I wrote down. So again, these are my opinions. These are my current ideas, and they may evolve, so please bear with me. Here's what I've got. This is sort of about the fusion versus traditional kind of like thing, tug of war like thing that I've observed sort of over the past several years since I started really with fusion. So it's worthwhile to prioritize learning about the timeline of the dances we practice, if they're influenced by traditions of cultures that we're not native to or familiar with. I think it's worth noting that we're discussing this in the context of different cultures from that of the dance's origin or cultures of origin, and that the conversation would sound different even if we swapped out one person who's on this panel. So I myself don't consider myself to be a belly dancer, but I'm certainly influenced by movements among other genres of dance. And for this reason, I'm conscious about my music and costume choices and the movements that are reflected in my dance. And being a fusion style dancer, especially earlier when I labeled my dancing to specifically be a form of belly dance, I had gotten the obligatory comments of, how is this even belly dance? Or this isn't real belly dance, from people who may consider themselves to be traditionalists. And mind you, most often these are Americans who have given me these comments. So I imagine that many on this panel have, and maybe some viewers here have also received similar commentary. And this is one aspect of our culture of communication that I hope to see shift. Although I know there are people who are strictly into tradition, and I respect that. But I would suggest that, with the exception of addressing overtly egregious choices, approaching an artist with an inquisitive rather than an accusatory tone is a more effective method for reaching understanding and staying connected. And in many cases, fusion artists have actually taken the time to learn and cross-train and study the movement and history behind what they're fusing. Depending on how they present their dance, it may not immediately be evident without inquiry. So from my observation, there are people who know what they're fusing and make intentional choices about how they present. There are people who don't know about what they're fusing, but would be open to learning if they were aware. There are people who don't know what they're fusing and don't care to know. There are people who know what they're fusing and don't care how it's presented. And then there are people who don't fuse any particular traditional styles and are moving experimentally. And in all cases, we've got various mixtures of awareness and intention that can often be clarified more effectively through inquiry, especially considering that no one has a trained eye in all existent forms of dance that could potentially be fused. And again, I'm saying this with a lot of respect for traditional cultures, and I'm definitely not blowing off the importance of maintaining and respecting and listening to the people from whom we borrow. But it's just to acknowledge that, to my understanding, all set or codified styles are fusion or subsequent iterations of previous styles or stories passed down. And current cultural context and exposure to other styles and forms of movement may also play a role in how people fuse. So it's crucial to acknowledge roots and traditions. But as we extend into more abstract forms of dance, I invite a few questions, and these are genuine questions that I currently have, so please, forgive me. So questions: is every single string of movement derived from a specific label or combination from existing styles? When we have conversations, I think it's important to ask. How much are we discussing this within the frame of prioritizing codified systems of movement when many dances are formed organically? Do we conflate traditionalism or respect for culture with the assumption that descendants from those origins or art forms are not also changing? And that's sort of when we have these conversations outside of the context of having anyone from those cultures included. So when it's just American born, for example, people having conversations, what voices are not being included? And does this in any way potentially perpetuate ideas about us in the West being forward moving and present, and them being relegated to the past? So in asking these questions, I'm reminded that in honoring tradition, it always helps to listen and learn. I feel, last point, that it is important not to speak for others, nor assume or decide upon a monolithic viewpoint for any grouping of people. There are people from regions and cultures of origin who celebrate fusion. So we have to be conscious before we start to speak for others and insist upon disapproval on their behalf. Not just for dance, but for anything, period. And I think this all ties back into creating space for growth and cultivation of awareness that will allow us to have more responsible conversations. So again, those are my current ideas, and I'm changing, I'm open and listening always. So thank you.
Wow, thank you so much, Rin. I think you've given us a lot to think about there as well with the questions that you posed. I wrote a few down, but if you would like, you can add them to the chat just so people can kind of see and write them down themselves, only if you would like to. Because yeah, those are some things that we can continue to think about. Thank you. And we'll open the floor to our next panelist. Grayson, yeah, for sure. I'll just mute myself.
Okay, so I think being politically and socially aware is going to involve deferring to the cultures of origin when engaging in hybridization, which I think is more or less reiterating a lot of what's already been said. Basically, if you're deferring to the cultures of origin, not as necessarily as permission, but always making sure that you're not doing anything overtly offensive. All the time, we're seeing more and more conversations starting from the dancers in the Menath regions, sharing what we can do to better honor and respect this dance more authentically and respectfully. And I believe that these conversations need to be ongoing and regularly revisited and disseminated to the community at large. And in the end, most of us are guests in this dance, so we need to especially remain attentive to that. And I wrote something in here as Rin was talking, and it made me want to speak on this slight tangent just for a short moment. Just the language around referring to these dances, because there's a difference in meaning between traditional dance, cultural dance, indigenous dance, folkloric dance. So when referring to something, I think there's value in being a little more specific about what we're talking about in relation to when you're fusing or when you're wanting to study with the culture of origin. What does that mean? And what are you looking for? You know, what is the difference between a folkloric dance and a traditional dance versus a cultural dance? And really addressing what can be safely used and maybe hybridized, and what is preserved for a different reason, you know? Because it's absolutely true that these dances have gone through authentic changes, and they have evolved over time, and they have evolved both internally and because of assimilation, you know, from colonialization and whatnot. But recognizing that there are some things that are maybe a little more sacred, or things that that are more safe or less safe to engage with. And that just made me want to point that out. So, closing the book on that. As far as the question, can we do too little? I think that's definitely possible, and I think that's been demonstrated many times that you can definitely do too little. But as far as what could be constituted as too far, I'm not sure that is for me to decide. I think it's always good when I'm talking about hybridization, when I'm talking about fusion, taking Bellydance and taking something else and wanting to marry them together. It's always good to be thorough. And if you're unsure of something you're doing, having a network of educated dancers to share feedback will always be useful. I have friends that I have reached out to about costume pieces, music choices, dance hybrid aesthetic choices, and asked for critical feedback if I was ever unsure. So, when in doubt, reach out.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you, Grayson. When in doubt, reach out. It is important to have people who you trust to just kind of bounce things off them and just making sure that, yeah, what I'm doing is cool. Yeah. So thanks for that. And Kelly, would you like to take the seat?
Yes. For this one, when I saw the question, and for the country, we are like, how to say that? It's like, because somehow we are kind of like followers. You know what I mean? Like, because we are for example, if fusion, then sometimes we are follow what Western countries do. You know what I mean? So that is the first idea we learned in the first moment. And then I think in this moment, it's really, for me, I feel like fusion, or besides cultural or political things, and we can really think about the question like Rin and Serena, they talk about like the point, and then what we really want to, what is our really feel. So it's kind of like we need to really listen and really learn, and not like just narrow to what we think or what is supposed to be. So I think this is a really good place to open mind to see more.
Thank you so much, Kelly. Yeah, I totally agree. It's definitely better to have an open mind instead of just keeping in your own narrow lane. Just, yeah, I agree with that completely. Thank you. All right, so we do have one more question left. I'm just going to take this moment to remind everybody that this is also a fundraiser for the Lebanese Red Cross, and all donations are going to be going to, you can make your donation to Serena via PayPal or Venmo. Here's a little card. Yeah, so just that reminder, I'll also put it up again at the end. And let's dive into the third question. Actually, one more thing I wanted to say before we get there is just, again, any questions that you have, you can put into the Q&A. We've already got 2 really good ones. So yeah, you can pop them in there. All right, so going on to the third question, it is broadening outreach. How much do we want to bridge the gap from the belly dance world into other genres and communities, and why? How will this reflect in the types of events, marketing, classes, and content that we produce? Or if you don't think we should be broadening the gap, just explain why. I'll just pop this one into the chat here for everybody to read. All right, and I'll open the floor to panelists to answer the question. Anyone want to take the first bite?
We're all too dang respectful.
And also, let's take a big breath. There's also been a lot of information getting in right now. We can breathe in and breathe out. It's, yeah, these conversations have been amazing so far. So thank you for that. Oh yeah, Carolina, go ahead.
Oh, no,
Oh, sorry.
I'm just laughing at our, this is the politest panel ever. I love it.
After you.
Don't let me silence your voice.
But I mean, if you do want to go first, that's also fine. All right.
Do you want to add anything, Megan? Because you've been moderating.
Oh yeah, I mean, I've been reading the comments in the chat here as well. One thing that did really pop out to me, this is going back to the second question, I believe, so it's not really on this one, but Jolene had mentioned something that sometimes new issues are hard to present to some communities in some places because it's lost in translation. So if you're English speaking, then yeah, you might understand a little bit more of maybe why something is the way it is or why something is classified as inappropriate. But if you're speaking in another language or you're from a different place that where this type of stuff isn't actually talked about too much, it's difficult. So yeah, it's important to kind of translate the issues into a different language, into saying Portuguese and Spanish. So we have to remember that when we're thinking about other places and why maybe people don't think the same way or it's lagging a little bit. So that just came up in the chat there that I thought, like, yeah, that's something that I think should be highlighted.
Yeah, definitely. My student Lisa, who's I think on here, shout out Montreal. What? We had the same topic. She was just like, everything you're saying, I agree with the words you use, but you have to understand in French, these mean really different things. And I hadn't even thought about that. So I hope it's okay I'm saying that, Lisa. But yeah, it opened my mind for that too. Like, just, there's like so many levels.
Yeah, yeah. I want to say thank you to Amel, who's also really active in the comments here, and really, really excited to be taking her workshop tomorrow. So that's going to be a highlight for sure.
If you're not taking Amel's workshop, what are you doing tomorrow?
You gotta. Yeah, so we've had a little break. Does anybody want to go into that, dive into that third question about broadening outreach? Oh, Serena? Yeah. Awesome.
So first, I will answer the third question. But first, I was gonna say that we could probably find people who are bilingual and capable of writing statements or translating discussions that are happening, but it's something that we just have to actively think about and do. But if there is interest, I definitely have friends that do translation work that might be interested in helping us out and getting more equality and inclusion and understanding in other countries. So we're sad about it now, but we could change it. So if you want to do it, reach out. Let's get this done and emerge. In the creepiest way possible. So third question. Yes, Rin, yes. I love it. So how much do we want to bridge the gap? So I wrote a little thing. I love bridging gaps. And if you know anything about me, you would know that because it's all that I do. But as we've said many times in the last hour and a half, as we explore mixing and matching of cultures, we have to respect what we're doing, where it came from, who created it, and who is still holding that down, and welcome them into the conversation. I think some people consider the word purist, or Rin used a different, traditionalist. to have a kind of negative connotation. But in the same way that Rin said, I totally respect the necessity of that. In order for dance to flourish, you need the full spectrum of people who devote themselves to maintaining the roots of an era, of a culture, of a moment in time in dance. And then the people who continue to dive off into new areas that have been unexplored. And I don't think that we should be negative about either of those categories, because they can't exist without each other. Without having your roots, your tree falls over, and without new growth, your tree is dead. So you need both sides. They need each other. And the people from either ends of the spectrum who are shitting on each other are really just doing themselves a disservice. Personal opinion. So I hope that we will continue to have fusion events become more prevalent and have the word fusion so that people understand that there is a welcoming of moving to new material, but also representing that we respect all members of the spectrum from old school to new school, and we want teachers from the full spectrum of old school to new school. And when we first had the conversation of having Emerge, we talked about wanting Amel, because she is, with decades of experience, someone that I think represents old school, but that I know has always respected us as we move forward and push into new territory, that she doesn't try to withhold knowledge or say that we don't deserve to work with the material that she gives us. And so it was really important to me to have someone like that at our festival, to know that we have someone who represents the roots for us, that we're not trying to represent the roots ourselves, but that we are giving a space for someone who is that, to bring it for all of you. And I think that's great. I think that when people get really picky about movement and like, that is a specific style of dance and you can't use that thing without, what am I trying to say? Okay, so I have studied a lot of different styles of dance, and there are a lot of similarities, especially when they come from like an African root. So you're gonna see movement that looks really similar, whether it's in Latin dance, whether it's West African dance, whether it's hip hop, whether it's like all of these dances, Brazilian dance, they all have a main root and a main movement vocabulary. And there are only so many ways you can move the human body. So I think the segmenting of this movement is mine and you can't use it, this is my hip circle from my culture, like that hip circle is in every single African dance because it's the only way that your body can make a hip circle. And perhaps there's an emphasis in a different place, and perhaps it's slightly smaller, or it's isolated, or you're doing something else on top. But like the marriage of movements is so beautiful that I think fusion excites me. And I want to share that with people. And I hope that even as we continue to look backward, we continue to move forward in a way that is respectful. That's my piece.
Yes, thank you so much, Serena. Thank you for being a bridge engineer and bridging those gaps between bridge. This is you, this is the bridge. So thank you so much for that. And it's true, these movements are in our bodies, and it's what we call them, that kind of creates issues sometimes, but thank you for bringing that up. We are going to introduce Amel into the conversation right now. She has something to say here.
So Amel, I'm gonna promote you to panelist here. So is your camera ready? Promotion.
Amel got a promotion.
Promotion. Hello, Amel.
I think we'll just wait for her to connect to the camera and mic quick. There she is.
Hello, hello.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for your statements. It touched my heart because this is the time to have some dialogues between all of us because of the dance, because we all love dancing. It's about that love that Kelly was mentioning before. And fusion has always existed. It's not something new. When people travel because of work, not just because of political issues, they always take something from the place where they are. That's how blues got created. And people think traditional or whatever you call them, dance of origins. I have really to get used to that expression. I call myself an ethnic dancer. And some people, they think, oh, that's not the right expression. I don't like the expression folklore because it has a lot of negative connotations. And it's like, I have done a lot of dances in my life. I started actually Eastern European dances taught by my Russian teacher. And my first performance, it was a Scottish dance. So already as I was young, I started with something completely different from my culture because we don't have classes. We learn from our grandmothers. We learn in weddings, basically. So becoming a professional dancer is a long story that I'm not going to tell you about. But what I liked about you, your statements, all of you, thank you for respecting tradition. Thank you for respecting cultures. I am from Algeria. I grew up with colonialism. There is so much to say about that, especially French colonialism is very different from the British colonialism. And when I see, I lived in different cultures. I lived in Germany. I lived in London for a long time, France, and coming to the US. Actually, I was so touched because I felt I was welcome in this country because people were interested about my culture. French people don't really care about North African culture. And the way how what you call belly dance or Middle Eastern dance or Oriental dance came to Europe, it wasn't from the Arab world, it came from America. It came because of the soldiers and their wives. That's how it came to Europe. So there is always, everybody's looking at the US, even our cultures, our countries. Everything that is American seems to be, that is the real thing. So I grew up with all that. I left home in my 20s. And when I left home, I was interested. I left by myself. I went to Germany because I speak German. And I am a linguist, so I speak different languages. And somebody mentioned the language. That is so important because in every language you have another connotation, you have different expressions. And this is also about movements. There are some movements that we have in the South, in the desert, that are very connected to Indian dance. Do people know about that? They don't, but that's what they do. So there is a whole thing that we always exchanged movements, we exchanged music. And you need to remember that bridge was always there. So when I get interviewed, the most of the time they ask me about fusion. And they say, what do you think about fusion? Fusion, people did it without being professional dancers. Music is the same. Even the language is the same. As you know, there are a lot of French expressions in English, but they don't mean the same thing. You do have a lot of Arabic expressions also in the language. So everything is one, especially when you are a linguist like me, where you go to different cultures. And I think it was Carolina, she mentioned integration. There's a big thing about integration and assimilation. The French, they wanted us to assimilate to their religion, to change our names, to become French. But integration is, I take everything what I like about one culture and I make it mine. It doesn't mean that I am neglecting my origins. So I fuse in my own way. I love male dances from different traditions, and I love adding that in my dance. So I am a modern woman. Remember, I am not a dancer of origins from the 19th century. I am living here. I am the bridge between my culture and your culture. And I blend, I take that. I thank you, Serena, for saying that I love watching fusion. But to me, it's not fusion, it's about creativity. Each one of you is so creative, and that is going back to art, because this dance is always put down. It's not the same level as flamenco, it's not the same level as Indian dance. And do you understand what I'm saying? It's still down. And we need to be together to raise and give respect to this dance, because I think one of you said vulnerability. Yes, emotions. This dance is about coming together. You know, we share a dance as a present to a bride. When we dance together, that is sharing this dance. And this is what is important. It doesn't matter if you are having amazing costume or if you're having your own, you are creating your own costume, or if you're buying a costume that costs $1,000. It's not about that. It's about what you are bringing in that moment, but it's not bringing to the others to be admired. It's also what you are expressing yourself, your soul, your heart in the dance. Thank you so much. I am really very grateful to hear all of you and to see that, wow, there is a big future for our dance because of you. Thank you. Bless you. Thank you.
Oh, Mel, thank you so much. Thank you so much for your comments and your support in this festival and in this panel. It really means a lot to us. And thank you for also acting as that bridge, as we were saying. So
thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Would you like to stay on here for the rest of the conversation?
I am here for you.
Great. Okay. Fantastic. Thank you.
Everyone's like, stay, Annabelle.
Annabelle, I'm just going to put you on mute, but whenever you'd like to speak, you can unmute yourself.
Oh, that was so good. Let's just soak that in for a second. Oh, thank you, Amel. And would anybody else like to comment on bridging the gap or broadening outreach?
I can go.
Yeah, for sure.
Especially, I wanted to say something in a comment and then I'll just keep talking, but I saw Tori was commenting and I just want to shout her out for the reason this is even existing is because she created a space for us to do this at Massive, we approached her, and I just want to shout her out for being down for growing her own event. And then due to COVID, it was canceled, but now we're doing it. So here we are, we made it. Tribal Massive. Okay, yeah, and thank you, Amma. This is my like rambly moment, but Amma was one of like the first belly dance teachers I reached like when I went to Middle East camp when I was like 15 years old. And like that was really when I was like coming into like my sexuality, like who am I as a woman, what do I want to be as a human woman on this earth. And like to have her like energy in my life really like changed my life. And I think that like a lot of us can say that have been touched by her. So thank you so much. Like your art has made a lasting impact on our community. Okay. And we're still going, we're still doing it. So, okay. Well, I have so much to say on this one. I've been trying to condense it in my mind, but as you guys may know, my kind of answer to all of these questions and that I've been just like racking my brain thinking about for the past like years or even decade of my life. I've been belly dancing for like almost like 14 or 15 years, like a good chunk of my entire life. And like my answer to all of this was the style that I now do that I call neo belly dance. And I think by explaining what neo belly dance is will kind of like answer my question to this, or answer this question. And shout out to Neo Belly Dance Canada, Megan and Nikki. Woo, woo, woo. So for me, like people are always like, well, what's the Neo Belly Dance format? And like kind of, again, I'm not just trying to promote like my classes right now. I just like to answer what that is, explain this topic. To me, it's not a format. I personally like, I have enjoyed formats, like I did Suheila's format, but what I personally feel like the world doesn't need one more format, which is not putting down anyone's format at all. It's just from me, I don't feel like that's what the belly dance community needed, was one more format. I felt like it needed a place to create thinkers and to create innovators and to create more questions. It didn't need more answers being given. It needed a space to receive your personal questions. And so that was my best answer, was to create an unformat. It's like a space that helps you to find your own questions and find your own voice. And it asks all these questions that we've been asking. And so I guess like my goals with making neo belly dance was to separate from the tribal fusion like ideals or the matrix around that, not because I reject all of those things, and my teachers were from that world and gave me like my life and I owe them everything, but I just didn't want to like be categorized, I guess, with that. I wanted to create a new matrix and say yes to this, no to this, yes to this, no to this, and create a very, very, very intentional definition of what I do with my art. And the point of that wasn't to exclude things, it was to include more things. And so for me, I used the phrase neo belly dance because I wanted to have a new definition, one where genders were welcome. I come from the queer world. My dad's gay, I'm queer. Like I work with whackers and vogers, like everybody gay around here. So I was just like, this like doesn't feel like, I had a really high standard for that. And I hated how it was always just like ladies, like girls night. And I was like, what? That seems so archaic to me. And so I just like, I wanted to have a space where even not queer men, but just like men, like coming from the popping world, it's like guys and girls, like why are poppers not working with us? And I think that for all of this, like to work out, I want to give another metaphor like Serena did. So I used to do, when I was younger, I did clay. And if you've ever done clay, someone just wrote, everybody gay around here. Okay, yeah. So like when you're working with clay, if you want to attach one piece to another piece of clay, you need to do like a grafting in the clay. So you take a knife or something, your fingernail, and you make little lines. It's called scoring, I think. And you make little lines in the clay, and then you put some water there. And then you do that on the other part. Make little lines and put some water. And that allows a receptive, absorbent area on both individual things in order that they can come together and remain bound more strongly. So that's the metaphor I want to use for our community with whatever we want to bond with. We have to create this area that's scored and that's absorbent to whatever we want to put on it. And it's not enough to just say, we want guys. We have to say, what is going to be the landing pad that allows the alien ship of guys to come and land on our planet Bellydance of the ladies? Like, we have to create, like, Serena's like, so yeah, you can't just say, oh, I want tourists in my country. You have to make an airport, make hotels. How are people gonna feel comfortable? Why do they even want to come to this in the first place? You have to really dig under and go to the source. And so for me in Los Angeles, the reason I moved here is like, I'm kind of like doing my thesis. I guess you guys maybe know I wrote this question, so maybe it's kind of a leading question because it's already tailored to like what I'm thinking about, but this is kind of like what I'm doing with my entire life. Like if Los Angeles was my grad school, this would be my thesis, as I'm just like, how can we do these things Amel's talking about, like, you know, fuse, but with respect. And then, but also like, if we just keep doing what we did, we're gonna start dwindling. And we've already seen this. Everyone here, like, raise your hand if you've seen numbers in your festivals going down. Like, where are my students? I don't know. And that's because like we just like keep having this very insular little world, and part of that is because of the limitations we kind of give to ourselves and our community. And so the little things that I think we can do to like graft the clay and create like a landing strip, so to speak, for these other communities is they have to be really fundamental. Like the thing Grayson's saying about costuming, those are not small things. Those are the things that are going to create that space. And so like, I guess for me in Neo Bellydance and with Nikki and Megan, we've explored like, what does costuming look like? In order for me to fuse with the popping community, I have to go to popping events. I can't just hope that they'll show up at my festival. And so for me to go to popping events, I have to create a look that represented belly dance, but also like could show up in a popping event. And I just want to tell a rambling story. The first time I went to a popping battle as belly dancer, I was scared shitless. It's like all these like really like tall, cool dudes, and they're like, and I was like, I wore, you guys, my belly dance costume, like my traditional, like I was like, yallah habibti yani. And so then like I get there and everyone's just like, it didn't read. And so I had to reevaluate, what do I want to bring with me? I'm never going to give up that vulnerability, that spirit, no matter how many battles I go to, no matter how many people give me weird shit. But I did rethink how I did it. Now I wear like a cropped sweatshirt so people can see my midriff. I made adaptions. And so like, and now people could see it. It helped them bridge that gap. Be like, I get what you're doing. And now all these like popper guys come to my house and we session, we trade ideas. But it took that like, that bridge. Yeah, it took a landing strip. Like, not only do I want tourists, but here's the like motel and here's the landing strip. And then how can they not be tourists, but how can we educate from there? So I know that was slightly rambly, but I think just if anybody is interested in that concept and want to talk about what Neo Bellydance is, like, I don't want to make this all just a plug like for my classes and stuff, but it's really just like, it's not just my classes. This is like a global community that I really care about. And it's a space for me to help you ask your own questions. It's not just directing it back to my ego. And we have like a Facebook group where we will continue all of these conversations throughout the year, because I don't think it's enough to just have one token moment where we like talk about like being politically correct and then we forget about it. So if you want to keep saying these discussions, like, hit me up and I'll add you to the Facebook group. People go on there and cry. They go on there and like ask for feedback. We ask weird questions. We get weird. So yeah, anyways, I think it is very, very important to be connecting to new communities yes, we have to honor the roots. I'm not going to say anything more about that because we just talked about it for like an hour. But without this addition, we will get left behind. And because of like being in LA right now, I can see why belly dancers are not getting like the parts that we want. Like other dancers get the belly dance parts in movies. It's because we're not updating our resumes. We don't have headshots. We don't have nice looking websites. Like we're getting left behind over here, people. And like we do want to honor the roots, but we also have to like update these things, or we're gonna keep coming up with these problems like Michelle and Grayson are talking about. Like, why are we not making money? Why is everyone like leaving our festivals? And so it's just, I think we do need a new definition. And for me, neo belly dance was that definition. And you are welcome to use that phrase if you want. It's not a club. You don't have to get certified and pay me $100 every year. It's just like a new definition. So anyway, yeah, that I'm gonna stop talking. Goes long. I'm very passionate.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for your passion. Thank you for your answer. And thank you for your unformat that you've presented to the world. I love that you call it an unformat, because it's what it is. It's more than a format. It's community. It's everywhere. So I think you've really inspired a lot of people and introduced new styles to a lot of belly dancers, and that's really admirable. So thank you for that. I'm just going to do a quick time check here. So originally the panel was supposed to be ending around 7:30. If anybody wants to, feel free if you are an attendee and you need to take off. No harm there. It's just we will be recording, so you can request a recording link if you want to see the end part of this panel. I'm going to open it to the floor if anybody wants to touch on this question really quickly. Otherwise, we can go on to the Q&A, but I see, Rin, you want to touch on this one? Perfect. Thanks.
Yeah, so just quick comment reflecting something Carolina said, I think Serena touched on it as well, about the insular aspect of the community. In the future, what I think would be probably one of the only ways for us to continue growing and stop seeing those dwindling numbers that we were talking about is to be more inclusive, even on like more of a local level within our style of, and I've never produced an event, so I don't know the ins and outs of what is required to run something or budget things or bring people in, but it is kind of a risk that you have to take, but I imagine that you would start to see returns if you open the door for different artists who are already out there and who are already amazing and professionals in their own right, but might not have that sort of platform that of the same amazing, but kind of the same sort of group of dancers that are invited back year after year after year for bigger festivals. So I think that that's sort of like a risk that might be a necessary one, not only to bridge the gap between styles, because you might be bringing in somebody who doesn't have the same, style, or has cross-trained or can bring something new to the table, or more ethnic diversity. So as well as bridging the gap between actual dance scenes. I think that would be a very important factor. So kind of hard to say now with the new online world that we're in, what things are going to look like, because I think we're just seeing it change right before our eyes and we're the leading edge. And I think we just have to stay open to adapting to what's next and just stay open. That would be the main point.
Yes, thank you so much, Rin. Thank you. Would anybody like to touch on the third question? If you like, oh yeah, Grayson, absolutely.
Okay. I am speaking to bridging the gap from a slightly different perspective because I do work at a university. I've personally found that being able to bring belly dance and men dance to people who are not already immediately tied to that community. I've had a lot of success working through the university, and I realize that that's a pretty, that same is like, oh, just go get a job at a university. Like that's something everyone can do. But that has been a point of access that has that I've seen some success with, not only with myself, but with several other instructors. Especially at my own university, we do have an international dance company. So finding that little niche and like focusing in on it, it was kind of already there, and just broadening it a little bit by bringing belly dance into it. Perhaps the people that I've taught, won't stick with it forever or make it a vocation, but it'll always inform what they do going forward. So that's from my own perspective on a method, another in for gap bridging. I do think that producing events will be a challenge because typically belly dance events, from my experience, are more catered to intermediate and advanced dancers. And there has not been a ton of traction with trying to appeal to new beginners. So I can understand that trying to go to a festival or a symposium as a brand new beginner can be very intimidating when everyone around you is already in the club. So I don't have a solution for that. That's just something I've noticed. I don't have a good answer for how to integrate belly dance into the larger non-belly dance spheres. I agree that in order to keep growing, it needs to happen. I do think that marketing-wise, kind of going off of what Carolina said, that if you want inclusivity, you can't just wish for it and hope that it happens. You do have to make the effort to bring people in. And like she mentioned with her own anecdote, if you want LGBT dancers, if you want BIPOC communities who are disproportionately underrepresented in the belly dance sphere, personally reaching out to those communities, to those dance studios, to those troupes, if they have like a cultural center, many subcultures do have their own sort of hub that can be accessed, and directly connecting with them and making those invitations personal, as opposed to just being like Instagram and using hashtags, it's very impersonal. So I think that a little more one-to-one connection could go a long way as far as on a micro level. On a macro level, I'm not quite sure what that would look like because I've never produced an event, so I can't really speak to that. But along with that, if you want more diversity, if you want more inclusivity, you need to make it explicit that your event, your show, your symposium, whatever it is safe for those people. And because a lot of people, and I can only speak from the LGBT perspective as a trans person, there's a lot of events that I don't feel safe going to, and a lot of things that it would go a long way if there were some kind of anti-discrimination statement explicitly put on marketing materials, whether that's on a flyer, additionally on the website, just some kind of mission statement that includes an anti-discrimination policy stating that I'm going to be taken care of if I were to patronize the event. So it needs to be inclusive of genders, of body size, ages, disability or ability status, inclusive of BIPOC, LGBT, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, just sort of bridging that gap. If you want inclusivity, you have to prove that you can handle it and do the work.
Yes, thank you so much, Grayson. Yeah, it's true. If we just throw events, but we're not really reaching out to people personally, why should they come if we're not doing in the work to make those relationships? So yeah, thank you. Oh man, everybody said so many good things. Soaking it all in. Kelly or Nikki, would you like to say anything about the third question? If everything's already been said, then we can.
I think so much amazing stuff has already been said, and there's some really amazing questions in the Q&A too. So I'd be happy to just leave the third question with those panelists and answer some questions.
Sounds good.
Kelly, unless you want to say anything. You good?
Cool. Okay, sounds good. Yeah, we have 4 pretty awesome questions in here right now. There we go. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just read the questions out. If you like, you can read them in the Q&A chat here if it's easier for you to answer and intake information better that way. I'm going to go read the first question. It is a long one, but I will try and say it as clear as possible. So question one is, Donna Mejia has talked about limitations on the accessibility to the cultures of origin of this dance for a number of people. It can either be due to financial resources, political upheaval, and in certain regions, and of course now due to COVID restrictions. Other than supporting one's local Menat culturally native instructors who are not all dancers necessarily have to. What are some other practical applied ways, sorry, it's really small. What are some other practical applied ways that the fusion community can connect and be in learning relationship with the source, people, or material in the art form? Or what are some methods that you've each already found successful, especially low cost, financially accessible, or local ways to connect with Menat source, people, or materials?
Can I answer that one?
Yes.
It was actually really cool. A couple of weeks ago, the Belly Dancers of Color Magic group hosted an online workshop with a group of artists in Egypt. So that was the first time I actually got to dance with dancers in Egypt. And I thought that was really super cool. And it's neat that, that we have that, like, with this festival being online and so many classes and things moving online, there are starting to be a lot more opportunities where, like, I didn't have to fly to Egypt to do that workshop. And I know that they're definitely going to be hosting more workshops, because I asked them, because I really enjoyed it. So you can find them on Facebook, and the group is called Belly Dancers. Oh wait, is it Belly Dancers of Color Magic? I think so. Yeah. And so I mean, online and looking for instructors online, and I hope that we can start seeing a lot more of that coming up, like training with people around the world. Now that, I mean, that's been kind of one of the things with coronavirus and everyone staying at home. It was like super hard at first, and we were all mourning the loss of our classes and community gatherings and all this stuff. But in the same breath, all of these beautiful new opportunities have come up online. So yeah, that's one thing that you can check out.
Yeah, that is good. And I realized as well, a lot of those classes also offer a sliding scale. So depending on where you are sitting financially, you have the choice to pay something at the lower end or the higher end. So I think that's also been something great that's come from doing classes online. Would anybody else like to take a jab at this first question here? And we can keep it up there for a while, and if anybody does have something to say, we can just revert back to that question. Just for the sake of time, let's go on to the second question. Okay, how do you guide a new student in Fusion if that person asks what style it is and what is it all about? Another loaded question when somebody asks who's new to the Fusion world, how do you respond? Panel, how would you respond to these questions?
Can I take that?
Oh, go
no,
ahead.
Go ahead, Carolina.
That was kind of part of the first thing I said. I don't want to like take it over too much, but just like the little things I mentioned, like making sure you just balance your classes, I think, in the same way that, like, when I teach a 90-minute class, I make sure to balance like some stretching with a little bit of lecture and a little bit of technique. So just making sure, like, if you have a weekly class, it's like, the first Monday of every month is going to be, we're just going to talk about the roots for half an hour, or like however you think you need to balance that. Even giving like little homework assignments can help if you're just like, it's too much information, like I can't fit it all into 1 hour. Oh my gosh, there's this culture and this culture and this culture. Just saying like, hey guys, I'm going to send you a link with this article. So your homework is to read this, and then we'll talk about it for 5 minutes next week. It is a lot with Fusion because you're dealing with so many different aspects. How do you fit it all in? So I think just making sure, even if you just do these little bits, or having events, like new students are hungry for knowledge and they'll follow your lead. They'll kind of do where you guide them. So if you guide them that every once a month we go to this and we talk about traditional Egyptian folkloric dances, whatever that is, like, then they will assume that that is how they learn fusion belly dance, I think, hopefully. So yeah, just integrating and balancing, I think. And music, that's another really good point. Like, music is a really great in point for bringing people into cultures, because I mean, of course, it would be nice if everyone sat down and read a 200-page article on the history of traditional like wedding dances in Egypt, but not everyone's going to do that. But when you can send them, like, I remember my first belly dance teacher was just like making me CDs. Like, that's how old I am. But like, they would be like, here, this is your Dubka CD, and this is your like Saidi CD. And I would just like listen to them over and over. And like, the rhythms just became literally part of like who I was in every day of my life, driving around doing errands. So yeah, music's a really good access point to draw people in. Just some suggestions.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I feel like too that no answer is going to be the same for this question, because each person's fusion can be so personal, and it might be just unique to that one person. So if you ask one person what type of fusion or what type of style do you do, it may be completely different from somebody else who also calls their style fusion, because they're fusing different things. But yeah.
Totally.
Yeah, and it's not always going to be a short answer. It might be a long answer too. I'm sorry, Nikki, go ahead.
Oh yeah, just adding on to what Carolina said. Yeah, like just making that time in your classes for, and taking on the responsibility of, you know, like if we're going to be teaching these styles, we need to also be being responsible in teaching the history and the culture. So yeah, like with Lusitera, we added into our syllabus, and like typically we do 12-week sessions, and it's like every third week we do a half-hour lecture. There's sometimes homework assignments. But another way we started doing it, like, you know, for beginner students, we talk a bit about where fusion came from, and then the cultures it kind of represented, and there's different lectures as they go through the levels. But the other thing we started doing was we integrated what we call the Fusion Dance Education Series, which was just recognizing that there was so much in our style, and that we were like, we wanted to have experts come in all the styles that we were fusing in to also be representing those styles. So we started offering a wide variety of like workshops and bringing people from, you know, Egyptian dance, and bringing from street dance, and bringing just a bunch of different experts in their styles, giving our students opportunities to be like, okay, this is fusion dance, but what is it? Oh, well, it's not really its own one style. It's an amalgam. It's like all these other styles. So it's about like paying respect to all those styles as well. Yeah, and I think that's been like also just really great for like community building and like enrichment and stuff as well. I know it sounds kind of crazy. Some people being like, we just gave our students away to other teachers. No, what? But it was good. Yeah.
Thank you, Nikki. That was perfect. Yeah, the Fusion Dance Education Series has been really helpful for us as well, because we're also learning from the instructors in their field and how they teach, and it's always great to learn from somebody else too. Just continuous learning.
Oh, can I add something?
Ooh, yeah.
I just had a really good important point come in mind, which is that a lot of these styles that we fuse are not studio dance styles. So one of the most important things we can do is get the heck out of the dance studio with our students. And that means something like, hey, everybody, we're going to a battle. Like if you're fusing popping, like Friday is a battle. This is important. Just like class, we're all going to go. We're going to see how the OG poppers judge a battle. And then they will learn so much about like the style just from watching the culture of that event. Or just saying, hey guys, like we're teaching a whacking fusion class. Let's all go out clubbing. Like that's where whacking came from. It was people just hanging out, expressing themselves and dealing with the trauma of their lives and just living their best life together, and, you know, have a drink, like have a smoke, like, you know, and so just kind of like, I'm not promoting drug use, but like, you know, going out to the club and just like relaxing, like whatever you do, like have a good time. And so much of our community, like I just see Pixie Ring, I miss this, and like, yeah, of course with COVID too, but I feel like even before COVID, like we can't even use COVID as an example. Like when's the last time you just went to the club with your friends and you just like dance and experience like community and solidarity? Like it doesn't happen so much anymore. And so I think like just making sure with our students that we get them involved in these out of studio activities that we call extracurricular, but it's not really extracurricular, it's like the curriculum.
Field trip.
Yeah. None of this stuff, most of these didn't start, like Amel said, she's like, oh, this is what we did at weddings. It was this like tender gift. So, you know, take people to events and take your students, give them, like, it's your job as a teacher, I think, to do your homework, find out where the battles are happening, where the events, the cultural events are happening, and like send that out to your students too. And I know, like Nikki said, there's a fear like, oh, will they take our students? Like, I don't think that community works like that. I think the more stronger you bring people in, the stronger you get.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah. Totally. I love also that, like, as dance as a gift, like Amel was saying, a gift for a wedding or something like that, because actually Nikki just did a birthday dance as a gift, which was beautiful. And I think that's something that, like, gifts don't always have to be things that you buy or things that you are tangible. They can be experiences of somebody else, giving their talent to somebody else and presenting it that way. Yeah. That might have been a little off topic, but
no, that's relevant. And yeah, I know everybody's like, oh, we can't do that because social distancing, but yeah, we can still do some things, social distancing thing, or even just getting your students to watch like another event online. Like, oh, you want to do Bollywood? You should watch this Indian thing that's online. Like, just bringing them into other live events like this one too. Yeah. Anyway,
totally
awesome. Would anybody else like to touch on that question? We can hop on to the next. Oh yeah, Serena.
So there were a few thoughts within that all together I was considering, and some conversation that's been happening in the chat as well, just about the social aspect of the dances that we fuse. Most of the dances that we do, like Carolina said, came from a social place, a place where it's not about being a professional, and it's not about necessarily being at the highest level and trying to make money off of it. And I know that some of us are, and I'm not saying like that's a thing, but also the other part is you have to have a community that isn't all trying to be professional dancers for your community to function. You can't have everyone, 100% of your community, be teachers. It just doesn't work that way. And so you need a level of people who are teachers and professionals who are doing a good job of representing the community and the culture and fostering an attitude of inclusion and community. And you also have community members that want to do this because they love it, not because they're trying to monetize it or they're trying to make this work for them or to travel more or anything like that. They do it because the dance makes them feel good. And I think for me that's really important about dance. Dance for me is because I feel good. I feel so good when I dance. And I want to share that with people. And I think that the root of cultural dances is usually the idea of making the community feel good and connected together. And so bringing people to places where that community exists so that you can start to join with that community. Like Carolina said, the word field trips feels weird to say because it sort of feels like you're like lurking in the corner watching them. And I feel like the idea of integration is really important and something that we've been talking about a lot. But as I started moving into Latin dance and social dancing, the concept of like dancing with another person, making eye contact and making art and connection and like making a thing that you're not trying to show anybody and you're not trying to sell and you're not trying to record. You're just like, you're making a thing because you love it and it feels good together. That piece I hadn't realized had been missing from my belly dancing until I hit Latin dance and I was like, ho, 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 ho. That feels amazing. And so like late at night at Massive, we had this conversation where I was like, I want to feel that social dance aspect in the belly dance community. We need to make that happen.
Yes, yeah, we so do. And that brings us to our event that's happening on Saturday as well, where we're going to kind of bring some of this community energy and things from kind of like street dance. And we're going to have a battle, a creative challenge online on Saturday. So I hope you can make it. Even if you're not doing any of the workshops, you can come and participate in this battle.
Don't let the word battle scare you.
It's a friendly battle.
Really fun.
Yeah, who's gonna come? Who's gonna do it?
In the chat.
I want to see you in the comments right now. It's gonna be super fun. We'll give you a demo. So it's gonna be like,
yes.
It'll be like, okay, Carolina versus Serena, and the challenge is you can only make circles or something. So then I'll just be like, do, and then I get my minute, and then it's like, okay, Serena, you go, and then yeah, she makes her circles, and then we'll be like, all right, Serena took that round and she wins the rubber chicken or whatever. Like, it's going to be very non-competitive, but we just want to remember and make a space that we can like interact together. Like maybe Serena does something cool with her head and I'm like, oh, that inspires me. And so we want to like incorporate that element so that you guys aren't just watching this festival, like watching us tell you what you should do with your lives and then watching us perform. Like we want to bring everybody together in that way. And that's another amazing thing we're borrowing from Black culture, since we're talking about that. But like ciphers and battling like comes from African dance cultures and Black culture, and so like just shouting that out. But we want to like incorporate that concept because again, the idea of like stages, this might sound like super politically correct, but even that is kind of colonialization like of the dance form. You're like, you are removed and we are over here. And I'm a stage dancer and I love it, so I'm not against it at all. That's my whole life. But just to remember these traditions and roots like from the cultures we're bringing from too. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Carolina. Yeah. All right, shall we move on to the next question? Yeah, let's do so. Okay, so this one was from Simone. So this says, how do we broaden anti-racist work throughout the wider belly dance community? How do the incredible folks on this panel, thank you, and participants who want to keep this vital conversation going and build on it after this weekend is over? So how can we continue to do this anti-racist work? Would anybody like to take the floor for this one? Yeah, Nikki.
Yeah, I'll put a few suggestions in. Really like bringing it into our own communities. Like, I know for me, sometimes I've gotten so overwhelmed of just trying to think about, you know, like how do we bring this, like broadening the reach out and trying to like, you know, with like around the world, and when really like even just at home, there's lots, you know, that work that we can do here. So like we were talking about some points earlier about reaching out to communities, to BIPOC communities, LGBTQ+ communities, offering spaces in our classes for them. Like Grayson was saying, you know, making sure that what the events and places that we're creating are safe for people, everyone to come to. And really just trying to, I mean, we all know it can get infuriating trying to like yell at people on the internet and be like, right. So really the best thing that we can be doing is to be like living by example and doing the anti-racist work within ourselves and shining that like a bright frickin' beacon as far as you can and making your community and building the community and yeah, and building from there. Creating safe spaces for conversations, like all these kind of things we were talking about in classes, community dances, all that kind of stuff.
And just with your friends and family as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, keep those conversations going. It doesn't only have to be out in like the dance community specifically. It can just be in any time a conversation comes up, just make sure you're advocating. Sorry, I jumped in.
No, we are. Yeah. Yeah,
Can we all do that? Can I do that with Rin?
Yeah, can we all reach into each other's square?
We're teleporting right now.
I'm gonna enter Rin's box.
Yeah.
Make sure you get consent first. Okay.
Yes, consent is important. What else are we gonna add to that?
Can I ask a question from that question?
Yeah.
This, like, I don't want to put anyone on the spot, the panelists of color here, but if you feel comfortable answering this, I'd appreciate it. And if this isn't the right context, like, of course, no worries. But I think I asked Serena this one night really randomly. I was just like, are you okay if I ask you a question, like, as your white friend? And she's like, all right, why not? So I was like, okay. And I'm just like, as a producer too, I feel it's really important to understand how to hire dancers of color without making them feel like tokens. And I'm doing my own research on this. I'm trying to take accountability, but I also wanted to ask, since we're here, if anybody has a comment on that. I don't ever want Black dancers to feel like, oh God, I'm like only being hired because I'm Black. But at the same time, if I don't put extra work into that, sometimes it wouldn't happen. And then people will just keep seeing no Black dancers. Or any dancers of color, like Latinx, Asian too, really, honestly.
Sure. So I can comment. I think that it's important to put the effort in there. I don't think I felt like a token. I have actually before, but in most cases I don't. When I'm invited, it's that I'm invited, and I'm glad that I mean, this online scene is the most I've performed probably in a year, and it's still not a whole lot compared to a lot of my peers, you know. And so what am I saying here? I think the fact that it seems like a tokenization of people is probably because there's such a lack of representation from the get-go. And so you still see very few people. And so I think that that's just a matter of sort of getting uncomfortable, which I understand that's sort of what you're aiming to progress, the diversity in the scene. And yeah, just a matter of representing or inviting people. And it doesn't have to just be one of us, there's so many. Serena had mentioned the two dancers, and I know exactly, I think probably most people here know exactly who it is, but if you've been around a while or you're exposed to diverse scenes, there's so many more professional, really highly skilled dancers in the scene who just don't get the same recognition for whatever reason, or because they're not part of that sort of like cyclical circuit of people or whatever it is. So I do think that it takes that effort that you're talking about. And from my personal perspective, this is just me. I'm not like all Black people. I'm just me. I think it is important to just to reach out as you've been doing or as you intend to do.
Yes, thank you so much, Rin.
Hi, you guys. Okay, so first, I love the fact that Carolina reached out to ask me for my opinion on how to sensitively hire Black dancers. I recognize that there are some people who might not want to do the work and answer that question, but I am certainly one of the people that would like to do that work and help answer that question. And I appreciate that she's thinking about it. And she asked it in this very like, if you don't want to answer, you don't have to, and I'm not trying to offend you, and I'm just trying to do good work. And I'm like, that's awesome, and I appreciate that. I think a great way to not make us feel like tokens is to not have us be the only one. Like Rin said, a lot of times if there's literally one of us, it feels like we were the token checkbox of like, what? One Black dancer, got it. And I feel like when we created Aphrodisiac, the show, one, it was to celebrate, yes, One, it was to celebrate us, but two, it was like, look at this list of 13 phenomenal dancers that you might not know. And if you didn't know us, why? And now that you do know us, do you want to see us again? Because you could if you ask for us. I feel like we have to work so hard to get noticed. And that a lot of times people say it's our fault that we're not out there. Like, why are you not posting all the time to get seen? And it's exhausting to, especially as a woman and as a Black woman, there are a lot of social pressures to be to make yourself smaller, to make yourself look like you're getting along. There's like the angry Black woman trope of like, why are you guys not hiring me? Why are you guys not paying attention to me? Why are you guys not paying what I'm worth? Because even as we get hired, we're not paid the value of what we are worth as dancers. And I also know that the belly dance scene has this as a general problem, because the money is passing in a tiny circle. So like that needs to be fixed. The money problem needs to be fixed, as well as the representation problem needs to be fixed. And like it's a chicken and egg, and I totally see it, and it's very nuanced, and I understand. But also, I think I can think of one festival. I've been belly dancing for 12, 13 years. One festival that I've been hired at that paid me like a really solid rate, flew me out, covered my hotel, paid my meals, and paid me a good solid rate that I was like, I could earn a living if I had festivals like that. One in 13 years. Like, it's not financially feasible for me to do this as a job. And if you make it that way for Black belly dancers, you're not going to see us. If we have to have day jobs in order to show up, if we have to pay in order to go to events to be seen on stage, you're not going to see us, especially knowing that socioeconomically Black dancers are at a disadvantage. So if you want to see us, and it sounds very blunt, you have to make space for us. You have to pointedly make space for us, and you have to pay to see us. Yeah.
Can I acknowledge what Nikki is saying about you're typing to us, but maybe we should pose it to everyone? Like, if we should keep going?
Yeah, I wanted to just say we are 30 minutes over time. We do have a couple questions left, but just respecting everybody's time constraints, just want to see how everybody's feeling and where we're sitting right now.
Yeah, and we could always go a little bit over and try and get one more in. And then another option that we could do as well is just post some of these and answer maybe on the event page and start discussions on there as well.
Yeah, I think, we could do one more, but I'm also like, I feel like we're in such a good place right now. I don't want to push it till everyone's burned out and starts to get like angry and feisty and like, so I think like something that could be really important is just to say like, what next? Like, we obviously need more than one of these, like every civil rights movement, and like, you know what I mean? Like, we should be doing this, I think, a lot. And I there's something maybe a little smaller, but yeah. And also on my Facebook group too, if you guys want to keep talking, we're like all about that too, so you can let me know. Just hit me a DM. But yeah.
Yeah.
More of this.
It's like in the chat, there's definitely interest for it, so that's awesome. Yeah, I know we're in Vancouver right now, so it's still only 8 o'clock, but I know there's many people from other parts of the world right now and on the East Coast that it's late. yeah, Serena and Grayson and Rin, but yeah, so and Kelly, who I think is at lunchtime there now, or yeah. Nice.
Like, good morning, Kelly. Good evening, Kelly. Good night, Kelly. Like, we never know what time zone she's.
Yeah.
So I think, definitely there's a need for more of these to happen, and I think that we can do that because obviously there's so much more to talk about than just one short 2-hour panel.
Yeah. And we just want to thank you all. Like, we're so honored that you have come and have been so supportive and active in the chat. It really means a lot to us. And this is only the first event for the whole weekend, so we have 3 more days. And tomorrow we have Amel's workshop, and she is, yeah, you saw her talking here today. You should definitely sign up if you can. And we also have Mega Man. So he's a popper, and he will be teaching us some popping techniques.
Insanely good.
So good, so good. And then Saturday we have a full day of workshops. And after that we're doing the dance challenge, dance battle, cypher, however you want to call it. And it's going to be great. So we'd like you to come to that if you can. That's also open to anybody who's also not participating in workshops. And then we have another full day of workshops on Sunday, and we close it out with the show. So the show will feature all of the instructors and their unique styles, and there's some, seeing the show. It's amazing. Good. So you definitely want to tune in.
It's a bomb show, you guys. Like, everybody, I was screaming. I was like, what? Serena's so hot. Like, everybody was so You should definitely be at the show on Sunday.
Yeah. But yeah, but most of all, we just want to thank you for being here and letting us create space with you to talk about some pretty in-depth, kind of hard to talk about topics sometimes. So thank you. If anybody on the panel has any last comments, I don't want to close it. It's so sad, but
I didn't mean to shut it down if people want to keep going.
No.
I wanted to make sure we knew we could do more of these too and stuff.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for being here, and thank you to the panel members. And we hope to see a lot of you, at least your faces in little squares on our screens throughout the weekend. Love you.
Bye.
Good night.
Thanks for moderating, Megan. You did such a great job.
Thank
You were
you.
such a yeah. Your tone really helped set a very respectful event. So yeah, shout out to Megan.
Awesome humans. So, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye. Good night. Good morning. Good afternoon. Whatever. Yeah.
Can we make it go to just the panelists again?
Oh,
is that a thing?
I don't think so, but I'll put a new one on and we can just do a quick
rehash.
Yeah. Goodbye.
Bye, everybody. We love you.
We love you. Goodbye.
Bye.